Space, we want to encourage you to sit in the first 5 pews or so. We're going to invite our candidates to go ahead and make their way to the front of the space and to snag a chair here at the front if you're one of the candidates who's speaking as we gather ourselves in. And good evening again. My name is the Reverend William E. Green. I'm the senior pastor here, and on behalf of all of our pastors and staff, please come on down. Come on down. That's okay. Yes, we're so glad. We're so glad that you have come to be with us. Thank you. We're so glad that you have come to be with us. Thank you. We're glad that those of you who are joining us online are with us as well. When we gather here in this place, we remind ourselves that we seek to be a community of God's love, feeding people mind, body, and spirit. And tonight's nonpartisan, non-sectarian event is an outpouring of that commitment, a commitment to encouraging our community to engage in loving action to help all people who call Montgomery County home thrive. We've got a few special guests we want to acknowledge, and we'll invite some of those to speak in just a moment. But before I acknowledge anyone else, I want to acknowledge Miss Marie Matthews, who is on staff here at the church, for whom this has been her baby the last several months. Thank you, Marie, and our racial justice team for your hard work. I want to acknowledge our county council representative, Vice President of the Council, Kate Stewart, who's with us. And I want to acknowledge Bill Scanlon, our moderator and the Leadership Council chair here in our congregation. We say here at Silver Spring that we are committed to building beloved community for our community on our corner in Silver Springs. And that concept of beloved community is rooted in the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and theologian Dr. Howard Thurman, both of whom believed that it took all people working together to bring their full resources to bear to help people thrive in community. This congregation has been long committed to that work, whether it's building that vision in bricks and mortar in the affordable housing project that's currently underway here, or the hundreds of thousands of pounds of food that get distributed, or tonight's event. We are committed to building beloved community, and we're grateful that you've joined us in that work. I want to invite Vice President of the Council, Kate Stewart, to come and share just a word of greeting with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am so glad to be here today. And I just want to extend my thanks to the whole congregation, to the Racial Justice Committee, and everyone who helped put on this evening. You know, holding these types of forums where we get to hear directly from the candidates who are asking for our vote, to actually come together in community to share our views in a civil and respectful way is what we're about here in Silver Spring and in Montgomery County, and what we should be about more broadly. And so I'm just grateful to be here with all of you. I want to thank everyone who is running for the Board of Education for doing so. I will tell you that I have been a city council member, I've been a mayor, and I'm a county council member now, vice president of the county council, and I can tell you they're brave souls up here. They are, each and every one of them. Putting yourself out there, running for office, talking to your neighbors and members of the community about matters that are so central to our everyday lives, and particularly for the Board of Education, is really just, it's heroic in my mind. And I just want to thank each and every one of them for doing that and for doing the jobs they're doing. And yes, let's give them a round of applause. And I am looking forward to hearing Mr. Scanlon moderate today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Stewart, very much for being here tonight and for the introduction. Good evening, folks, and welcome to Silver Spring United Methodist Church. As Pastor said, I'm a member here and chair of our Leadership Council, and I guess more pertinent to tonight's conversation, all my 5 now fully launched adult children are Montgomery County High School graduates, 2 from Einstein and 3 from Magruder. My 2 stepsons, my 2 stepsons are both working with MCPS. One is an English teacher at Walt Whitman, the other is a paraeducator and defensive coordinator for the football team over at Walter Johnson. And our oldest granddaughter is now a second grader in the French immersion program at Maryvale Elementary School. So I do have a vested interest in our public schools, but I know all of us do here tonight as well. And my role here tonight is not to interrogate, but to facilitate what I hope will be an earnest and engaged conversation between our candidates here tonight. Many issues to get to, but before we do that, I just want to go over kind of how tonight's forum will proceed. So to start, we've asked each of our candidates to give an opening statement. It can be up to 3 minutes in length or whatever. However brief or short, 3 minutes is what you got. I will then engage the candidates in some topic areas for about 20 or 25 minutes. And candidates, I'm going to ask you to keep your responses as concise as possible, maybe a minute or so. In most cases, I will address the same question to all of you. But if you'd like to respond to what another candidate said and you hear something, just raise your hand and let me know, and I'll give you another 30 seconds. In the TV world, if I go something like that, that's 30 seconds. It doesn't mean you're doing great. It means you've got 30 seconds to go. Audience members, you have a very important role too. You've seen the index cards that we've handed out. And there should be plenty of those in the pews and at least a couple of pens in each of the pews. So feel free, as the conversation gets underway, to write a question on that card. Try to keep it to one question per card so it makes it a little easier. And we have a couple of ushers from the Racial Justice Ministry and elsewhere that will be, if you have a card during the conversation, Anna's over there, and Margaret's over here, and they will take those cards for you. For any Spanish speakers here tonight, Mark Simon and Kate Rios, if you guys would just raise your hand, they can translate both your comments, written comments or verbal comments. And just to the candidates, the microphones have a little on-off switch. On if you push it down. So once you finish speaking, just push it down and it'll save the battery life. Now let's get to the introduction to our candidates. I'll do it in alphabetical order. So, and you didn't sit in alphabetical order, but as I introduce you, if you want to stand or wave your hand, we have with us tonight Brenda Diaz. No, just Brenda Diaz. There you go. Shebra Evans, Rita Montoya, Laura Stewart, and Natalie Zimmerman. And regrettably, Lynn Harris could not join us this evening due to the death of her father, and we've offered Lynn our deepest condolences. Her good friend, Yegis Cowanmuch, is here to deliver her opening statement this evening. So if we'd get underway, Yegis, I'll give you the opportunity to read the opening statement from Lynn, and then you can have a seat in the audience. So the opening statement here from Lynn Harris.
I think it's on. Yes. Oh, there you go. Good evening, everyone, and a special thank you to Silver Spring United Methodist Church and the Racial Justice Ministries for hosting this forum. I apologize that I am unable to be there in person this evening and very much appreciate being asked to have a representative share my opening remarks with you. That would be me. I am a former MCPS teacher, proud parent of a 2021 graduate of Einstein High School, a nurse and a lawyer who spent 12 years as a local and county-wide PTA leader working with students, teachers, and families all across the county. That work gave me a wide and deep understanding of MCPS that has served me well since my election in 2020. After 3.5 years on the board, my why is the same: to push MCPS to become a school system where every person, every day, feels safe, welcome, and valued, being exactly who they are. To create inclusive and affirming classrooms with windows and mirrors, where students see themselves and their experiences reflected in the content they learn and the books they read, and also learn to appreciate those whose experiences are different from their own. To hold MCPS accountable to doing the work to ensure every student gets an excellent education and every employee is treated well. A strong commitment to doing the hard work to become an anti-racist and anti-bias system where bigotry in any form is simply not tolerated. I continuously engage with students, teachers, staff, and families to hear their perspective on how MCPS is doing and what we need to do better. My 160-strong team of interns make sure their daily lived experience of our schools informs my consideration of every issue that comes before me. I'm energized by all the time I spend in our schools, especially the shadow days, where students host me and I spend the day learning alongside them and seeing great teaching in action. I am focused on the work to make MCPS better, so we are constantly moving forward, being driven by our data and unafraid to be fully transparent. Through my work on the Fiscal Management Committee, I have initiated a system-wide workflow analysis, looking intentionally at improving MCPS processes so we are efficient, effective, and a good partner to the many organizations who work with MCPS to support our students. I celebrate and elevate the ongoing work to make MCPS a cleaner, greener system, the board's new aggressive sustainability policy, and our student climate warriors committed to holding MCPS accountable to those promises. I am proud of the board's work over the past year to move the school system through a time of crisis and a necessary leadership change while creating the conditions for a robust nationwide superintendent search that attracted a large field of impressive candidates and yielded a truly excellent outcome. A talented superintendent who knows that the primary job of central office is to support principals in schools and believes that treating people well in every situation is non-negotiable. Public education is a true public good, and it is my honor and my passion to serve this system, to celebrate what's working, to fix what's broken, to create continuous structures of accountability, and to stop talking about rebuilding trust, but instead focus on being trustworthy. I appreciate your consideration of my candidacy.
Thank you for speaking for Lynn Yeagas. You can have a seat. Thank you. And Rita, if you'd like to go next, that would be great. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about that. Brenda, go ahead. Yes. Well, we'll just go down. I will just keep an eye on time. I know we went a little long, so take the time you need.
For coming tonight. I'm very excited to be here this evening to share with you my platform and to share with you my vision for MCPS. So a little bit about me and my goal, my mission as I'm running for Board of Education. So I was born and raised in the Bronx to Puerto Rican parents, and in the 1980s, when I went to elementary school, I had the opportunity to be a part of a gifted and talented program. And in that gifted and talented program, I was able to go out on field trips to see Shakespeare performed. We read Shakespeare in the classroom. We were able to do this in my 5th and 6th grade class with Mrs. Losack. And so I had wonderful opportunities to go on field trips and just be completely engaged, immersed in my learning. I look at my time in elementary school, in middle school and high school, growing up in the Bronx during that time, having been given that opportunity to grow academically as a gift that the public school system gave me. When I look at MCPS, unfortunately, I don't see that happening for our children. Academic rigor has declined, I would say precipitously. We see our math and reading scores have dropped so much over time. And our children are really suffering because of that. So when I look at what's going on within MCPS, my main goal and my main mission is to rebuild the foundation of academic excellence in our schools. I want the same opportunities that I was given as a child to be given to our children here in Montgomery County. No matter who you are, no matter where you live, no matter your economic background, doesn't matter your situation at all, you should be given that opportunity as a child to be given grade appropriate assignments that challenge you to go above and beyond what you're at right now. I believe that our children are capable of meeting these challenges. I believe in agency. I know that when we as parents, families, and as a community support our children, that they will meet those challenges of academic rigor and academic excellence in the classroom. One of the ways that we can do that is to make sure that our teachers are fully supported, that they have everything they need to be successful as teachers, as the professionals that they are. Right now, many of our teachers complain that they don't have those resources, and we need to make sure that they do. Another way that we're able to provide that foundation of academic excellence is to be diligent about our oversight of the budget. Millions of dollars are spent on waste, and we need to eliminate waste within our system. And finally, I believe in parental involvement and engaging the community on a profound level, on a deep level, on a daily level, every single day. Our parents, our families, our community should be involved in what's going on within MCPS. That's my mission, that's my goal, to rebuild academic excellence within Montgomery County, and I look forward to doing that when I'm serving on the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Shebra Evans, some opening comments.
Sure. It is so good to be here this evening. Thank you to Silver Spring United. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So thank you for having us here this evening. I'm Shebra Evans, and I want to thank Pastor Green and all the members for allowing us to be here. I really appreciate having the opportunity to come and conversate with you all before the start of the forum, to get to know you and what your values are. My husband and I, we moved here 23 years ago because we knew that Montgomery County was the place that we wanted to live. This was a quality public school system, and we knew we wanted to raise a family. So 23 years later, here I am. I've been on the board for 8 years, raised 2 daughters through the Montgomery County public school system. Sierra is a freshman at Ohio University, and Sydney is a senior at Agnes Scott College. What I have been able to do 8 years ago in thinking about the school board was participate in being the PTA leader at the local and county level. And what got me involved is because at that time, my elementary school principal talked about the achievement gap. I was not aware that all of our students did not have access and opportunity. I made the assumption that education is free and that we were serving the needs of all of our students. So that's really why I got involved in PTA. I wanted to make certain that I was part of the solution and helping to bring a perspective to the board that I did not think was there. And so I really enjoyed this time on the board. I've been able to see that the system has made very good progress. What we have been able to do since I've been on the board is expand pre-K. Research shows, and it's very clear, that we can give our students the ability to be successful in life if they had that start early on. 1,000+ students have been able to access a full day of pre-K, and I've been a strong, staunch supporter and a huge advocate for pre-K. I have tried to make certain that I'm making good on the promise that when our students leave Montgomery County Public School System, that they can access their college career and be ready to serve in their community. And how have I done that? We have been awarded being top in ensuring that our students have been able to graduate with their associate's degree as well as their high school diploma. And what does that do? That means that our students that want to be able to go on to get their bachelor's degree is now more affordable for them. If our students have the wish to go right into their career, they have their credentials free of charge because the school system has paid for that, and now they have been made to be more competitive and have a jump start on their career. I'm very excited and proud of that work, and I know that I cannot continue to do this work without your support and without your vote. I chair the Communication and Stakeholder Engagement Committee meeting, and what I'm trying to do is ensure that we are engaging our community in a two-way dialogue. We need your input. We need you to tell us where we can continue to make improvements. We can't do this work alone, and I do value feedback and your thoughts. And so I'm looking forward to the discussion. Please share your questions, and I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Shebra. And Rita Montoya.
Thank you so much, and thank you all of you for being here tonight, especially out in this rain. I'm sure you would much rather be home, cozy, and settling in. And my name is Rita Montoya. I'm running for Board of Education for the member at-large seat. I am a former PTA president at North Chevy Chase Elementary and a former executive board member at Rolling Terrace Elementary in Tacoma Park. I'm also an attorney and a former juvenile public defender and a passionate advocate. But most importantly, when it comes to the Board of Education, I am a mom of 2 current MCPS students. They're in 3rd and 5th grade. They're 8 and 10. And so I live MCPS and its policies every single day. I feel the disconnect every single day. And that's why I decided to run for Board of Education, because I know that all of our children deserve to learn and deserve to move forward. And to do that, we need small class sizes, we need adequate staff and teachers, we need proven curricula and extracurricular opportunities at all of our schools, not just some of them. We need to make sure that our children feel like they have the right support and resources for their emotional and mental health challenges, that they're learning conflict resolution, that they're free from hate bias, anti-Blackness, prejudice, anti-Semitism, hate against LGBTQ plus communities and their students and families. We also need to make sure that our kids are safe from physical violence, from weapons, from drug use. Most importantly, I know that we have to rebuild trust in MCPS and the Board of Education. I hear from families across the county, from elected officials, they don't trust their school system anymore. And how do we do that? We model it. We model accountability, strong leadership, oversight, and transparency. Because I know that if we set high expectations for our students, if we provide them with the support and the tools and the resources that they need to foster their growth and their resilience, that they can achieve, and we can all move forward together. And when I'm elected, that's what I will work with my colleagues at the local, state, and federal levels to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Laura Stewart, you're next.
Hello, my name is Laura Stewart, and I'm running for the Board of Education in District 4. Thank you so much for having us here. This is kind of a little homecoming for me because I spent many years in the basement of this building with my kids in Cub Scouts. And we did the Pinewood Derby and all of that, so thank you for having me back here. It kind of feels like a homecoming. I've been a Montgomery County resident for 27 years, and my children are recent MCPS graduates. Growing up in DC and Prince George's County, I learned about Tikkun Olam, which teaches that it is my responsibility to make the world a more just place. For over a decade, I've brought that work to leadership positions in 6 different nonprofit boards, including the local and statewide PTA. Over the years, I've built productive relationships with decision makers and school communities, and I've earned the teachers' union endorsement. I know from experience that you can get the best education probably in the world right here in Montgomery County and MCPS. But as a parent and advocate, I also know it takes too much intervention to access that opportunity, and those opportunities often aren't equitable. Children and staff need to feel welcomed, valued, and safe in the school environment, and that hasn't always been the case. We can and we must do better. The Office of Inspector General, the very office I advocated in 2019, detailed the problems that we had in human resources and other ways, and the development and the way that the Board of Education oversees contracts. These reports were shocking, and they motivated me to run for office. I was also truly worried that the central office mismanagement was going to unravel our education system. So this is really what pushed me to file in February because of the January Office of Inspector General report. But I'm not new to this, right? So I've been advocating at the state level and at the county level to make our schools better. I helped make sure that the blueprint was passed, which actually demanded that we expanded pre-K. This is really important. We need to live up to the promises that the blueprint lays out. And to do that, we really need to build the trust with our community and our legislators. The Board of Education needs to tackle these issues as the oversight body for MCPS. No one else can do the oversight except for the Board of Education. I've advocated for open data and transparency for years so that we can see patterns and direct the use of our money more efficiently. I'm ready to bring my experience, energy, and love for this community to the board. Vote for me and we'll act together to bring accountability, collaboration, and transparency to the Board of Education. Please join me at laurastewart.org and we'll act together. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Natalie Zimmerman.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you to our hosts. I'm really happy to be here this evening. Usually I get a little nervous with public speaking, which is kind of funny because I spend all day in front of 8-year-olds speaking. I am a current MCPS teacher. I currently teach 3rd grade, and I absolutely love what I do. It is one of the greatest joys to get to spend all day with students and to help them learn and grow. being an MCPS teacher, I have seen day in and day out how policy affects every single day. I live and breathe MCPS. It is my job. It's what I do. And over time, I have noticed and I have been disheartened and disappointed time and time again, from Beitelman to being locked out of board meetings. It is sometimes so abysmal that I think, gosh, who could change it? And then I went, well, if not, I guess it must be me. And that is why I'm here. That's why I'm running. That I believe not only that, I'm not here just because of doom and gloom. I'm here because I believe that we can create a greater change. And I recognize that we have, for example, I recognize we have an opportunity gap and that data-driven instruction can help fix it. And I know that every student can learn. I see it every single day in front of me, but they need their teachers to have a tenable workload. They need their teachers to have control of their own planning time so they can do that. And I believe that education is the greatest act of optimism, and it's the greatest investment that our community can make in our students, in our children, and in our future. We need a Montgomery County public school teacher on the Board of Education, someone who knows this experience, someone who can bring connections from the classroom, someone who has that classroom experience. The people closest to the teaching and learning should make decisions about the teaching and learning. And that's why I'm running, and I'm really excited to meet all of you. My name is Natalie Zimmerman. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Thanks to the five of you for being here for your opening statements. We're going to get to probably about 20 minutes of my questions till about maybe quarter of 8 or so, because I really want to get questions from the audience. So again, there are index cards in the pews, and you can just hold them up as we get through this, and a couple of our ushers will be available to pick them up for you as we get underway. But let's get started. And again, and feel like if you want to sit and respond, that's fine. You don't have to stand. Whatever, if you think better on your feet, that's fine. And keep in mind, we'll try to keep the responses to a minute, but if you want to follow up to another candidate, what they had to say, that's fine. And I'll start at this end and go with Natalie first. So, along with thousands of students, the new superintendent, Dr. Thomas Taylor, started his first school year in Montgomery County. For all of you, what are your expectations of the new superintendent and the items he needs to put at the top of his to-do list? Natalie Zimmerman, you can go first.
I turned my microphone off. It sounds like it's back on. Okay, great. So I have had the pleasure of interacting with our new superintendent, Dr. Taylor. He also came and visited my school. He visited my classroom. And that, I believe, is one of the first things that we need, is that our superintendent should be in the schools, that they should be out there, they should be seeing it, along with our other central office members. If I'm not mistaken, it's still MCPS policy that when we are short on substitutes, that we bring in central office staff to help fill in some of those vacancies. And that is something that I really believe needs to be happening. We need those people to be inside the classroom. They need to be interacting with students. They need to know what it's like. So that, number one, getting inside the classroom, pleased to see that he's already doing that, as he's been in my own. Something else that I really think is important is interacting with community and interacting with those that maybe aren't happy with the school system and hearing what things are going well with the school system. So hearing community concerns is another key point in that as well. The third is the transparency. I think that goes along with both, right? Being in the classroom, interacting with community members, but then the transparency is essential as well. There are so many platforms that we use daily to compile data. I use them every day to drive my instruction that I do with my students. There's no reason why this data can't be then, we can't remove the identifying information and then release it to the public. We do it, it's possible, and there are other forms. If we are using platforms for other bigger data, such as the reports that we're making, if we are not using platforms that are friendly to do that, then we need to change our platforms, that we need to be releasing this data as well. So,
all right, great. Well, I'll give Laura a chance to respond to the question, the top of the list for the superintendent.
First of all, more open communication. I feel like we've made a start there, but we need to continue to have engagement with the community. And actually, I met with him right before he became superintendent, and I suggested that there be an emergency 800 number that parents can call in case they hit a brick wall. And lo and behold, 3 days later, he had 2 800 numbers that you can call, and he said you'd get a 72-hour response. So that's a good start. Open data, I've been an advocate for that for over 5 years. Some of you probably think I sound like a broken record, but it is so important that we get data in a way that we can actually compare what the data is to see what it's doing school by school. And then an extremely important thing that the new superintendent needs to do is to change the culture at central office. Too often, advocates have felt like we've been gaslit over and over because what's happening in the schools does not match what comes out of the mouths of the leaders in central office. And so in this way, if we can meet at the table and have the same cards on the table, then we can actually go ahead and make those improvements, especially literacy and math. We've got to attack that right away.
Okay. Rita Montoya.
Safety. Kids can't learn and teachers can't teach if they are not safe. So I have been thrilled to hear Dr. Taylor say that that is his main priority. And he doesn't just mean physical safety. He means safe from hate bias, safe from the emotional and mental health challenges that so many of our students and even our staff have, safe from hunger insecurity, from food insecurity, hunger in the morning, right? Kids can't learn if they haven't had breakfast or if they haven't had lunch. I think that, when we start to look at those really base level foundational things, you'll hear him say Maslow before Bloom, right? That's what he's talking about. When we address those, then we can change the culture, right? When people are feeling better and safe about the space that they're in, they stop acting in a fear-based way. So I've been really happy to hear him focus on that. With that, then, will come in as a natural consequence, then we can start to learn, we can start focusing on making sure our proficiency rates are up, which are definitely things we want to improve and we want our superintendent to pay attention to. Also the waste. Do we need more money? Absolutely. Things cost what they cost. But there's also some waste, and we need to curb some of that. And that may mean some changes in central office or other spaces, but sometimes that's what we have to do. Thank you.
And Shebra Evans.
Absolutely. So I've had the extreme pleasure of being able to hire the current superintendent. And what you see is exactly what we saw in the interview. And so safety and security was absolutely the first priority for the board as well as for the superintendent. And as you heard, our kids cannot learn if they do not feel safe. And what Dr. Taylor has been doing is going out into the schools and just restating how important it is for everyone in the building to establish and build those relationships. Our students need to feel connected to the people that are in the school buildings. And if for some reason they do not feel safe, if there's someone they need to talk to, that they do know who that trusted and valid person is. Literacy and math, academic excellence is everyone's priority, and that's something that the board wanted to ensure that the superintendent came in and did that work. In our previous budget, we put in math coaches, as well as we're doing the science for reading, and we did that here in Montgomery County prior to the state making it a requirement. We want to ensure that the progress that we are achieving in our small increments is continuing to happen, and so we're monitoring that progress on a monthly basis at every school board meeting. In addition to recruitment and retention of our staff, it is really important that we have high quality teachers that reflect the diversity of our school system. And so that is high priority to ensure that we continue to have quality instructors implementing quality instruction to our students. Thank you.
Thank you. And Brenda Diaz.
So I would hope that Superintendent Taylor focused on academic rigor. The mission of a public school system is to provide high quality education to all of our students. And that needs to be done across the board for all of our children, no matter where they go in Montgomery County. I would ask him to get rid of grade inflation. This is a problem, especially in the high school level, with the 50% rule that was in place for a very long time. We need our midterms, we need our final exams back, we need phone-free schools so that our children are able to focus during the school day on their assignments. We need to raise our reading and writing and math proficiency scores, and the only way to do that is to ensure that all of our students are getting grade-appropriate assignments. So we need to meet that challenge and that expectation of providing a high quality education to all of our students. When I meet with families, they say to me, how is it that my child, one parent in particular told me, how is it that my child was absent for 34 days during the school year and managed to get A's and B's? Now my child is intelligent, but what are the actual expectations? Homework assignments as well. We need to bring those back. Our children need to practice and to learn those skills, and that needs to be something that's across the board. And in meeting with many parents across the county, they are disappointed that their children are not being provided those opportunities. So I would say academic rigor.
Let me start with, go back to Rita Montoya, and something you said in your opening statement about need to rebuild trust. And you all can answer this question. We'll start with Rita, and you can explain yourself. Well, what are the areas that you think that the school board needs to rebuild trust with students and parents and the general public?
I've had the privilege of talking to so many different people about our school system in the last 7-8 months. Families, policymakers, nonprofit organization leaders, teachers, staff, you name it. And there's just a general feeling of we don't know if when we say we need something, if we're going to get it. They say they're going to do something, but then it never comes through. The policies sound great, but that's not what we're seeing on the ground. And my family, I've felt that as well. So when I talk about rebuilding trust, it's also not just about what's happening in the school-to-school level. Our elected officials are not going to work hard for us and give us all this money if we're not managing it properly. If my kids wreck the house, I'm not going to leave them home alone for the weekend, right? So, when we talk about rebuilding trust, it has actual consequences because we need that budget. We can't do any of these programs and services without that. So we need to, when parents seek help, they need to know that they're going to get it, or that they're going to get clear answers, that they're going to be able to reach someone. Our teachers and staff need to know that when they report problems, like they did in the Beetleman incident, that they are going to get the help that they need so that they can be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Shebra Evans, you want to answer next to the issue of trust, rebuilding that trust?
Absolutely. I think it's important that I am a current school board member, and we make a lot of assumptions. Our budget is $3.3 billion, and when I'm going out and talking about the budget, I can make the assumption that you understand and know what I'm talking about. There is a way that we could be more clear and more transparent about our budget, and that requires going out into community, having conversations with a variety of partners, and bringing them along on what we're doing, showing them where we're having the return on investment, and also letting them know that when we're implementing programs, in the event that the programs are not working, that we are no longer continuing to do those programs. That's why we have program evaluations now, so we're not eyeballing a program and making a determination. Shebra just thinks because her child is not doing well or really utilizing this program that we should do away with it. We have an Office of Shared Accountability. We have a data analysis person that can actually assess and analyze, in addition to knowing that behind every student there's a story, and going into the school buildings and figure out what's working and what's not, and then coming to the table and sharing that with our community. So sometimes it looks like being transparent and talking about when we actually didn't get something right and what we're going to do to course correct. So I have really committed myself, not only as an individual board member, but within the committee that I chair, having the conversation and educating our community all along the way, and really going out into the communities that aren't the communities that we normally are able to get into, to really talk and have a conversation. So that requires meeting our parents, our families where they are, and Dr. Taylor has really been great at getting out to the community and talking to business members.
All right, Brenda, would you like to respond?
Right, so in order for us to build that trust or rebuild that trust, we need to actively engage with the community. We have the Board of Education has meetings that are like marathon meetings during the day. We need to change the time of the meetings so that people are able to attend, parents, families, stakeholders. We need to be able to meet with all constituencies, not just the people who we like or who we agree with, but make sure to find common ground with anyone who cares about what's happening within MCPS. We need to prioritize safety and actually listen to parents when they say that their children are not safe in the school buildings. You know, we had a teacher testify this school year about, last school year, about Kennedy High School being an open-air drug market. We have members of the board who are saying that that's a perception, that there's a problem. The union even says this, that it's not a reality that, there's violence and there's drugs being sold in our school buildings. So we need to listen to parents and we need to listen to students about their actual experience. And then we need to listen to families when they speak about their programs being closed. There are 2 programs that were closed with very little input from the community, the Darnestown Autism Program and the MVA. These parents were just outraged about the little bit of communication that was taking place. So we need to listen to our families, our students, and our teachers about safety and engaging with them actively, openly, and honestly.
Okay, a couple more responses on this. Laura, would you like to respond? Laura Stewart.
So rebuilding trust, I do agree we need to work on that. For one thing, the budget process has been very messy. The county council, they're not very satisfied with everything they were getting throughout the budget process. In fact, at the very end, there are details that came out about what would have to happen if certain monies weren't put in the budget. And then 2 weeks later, it was a different story. So we need to have really good data out in front of everyone so we know what we are working with. We need to do the work ahead of time, do our homework. Also, there's constantly programs that the Board of Ed says will be rolled out, and then we wait for these programs and they miss the deadline. And so, for instance, when I was working again on open data, we asked them to have these school profiles and data open, and the date came and went, and then finally it did come, but it feels like you're constantly having to go back and check. So they should be, or if I was on the board, I would give an update to the public so they would not have to come back and constantly check. One more thing is more town halls like this. This can really help build the trust so we can face you and have this conversation. We stopped doing that. I don't know what happened, but since COVID, we really haven't had these town halls.
Let's hear from Natalie Zimmerman on this issue of rebuilding trust.
Thank you. I like to say that MCPS is in a transparency deficit and that we need to be working on fixing that. We need to be increasing our public outreach to the community. Again, with that data, it needs to be accurately presented, it needs to be transparent, people need to be able to see it. Another thing that I think is important is that our board needs to have a courageous conversation, not just in how MCPS functions, but also in how the board itself is functioning. We could be having more accessible meeting times, different regional meetings, more translation services available, generally making it easier to engage with the board. Right now, I believe it's more difficult and that there are a lot of closed sessions. I don't believe that every closed session needs to be closed, that there can be some information that we can offer up and not keep everything so tight-lipped. I also like to say that the only consistency in MCPS is inconsistency, and I think that tends to lead to that trust that we're lacking. So seeing greater consistency in how our policies are implemented throughout our schools, seeing greater consistency in how we function as an entire school system.
Because I'm pretty sure we'll get questions on school safety and some of the other academic performance and teacher retaining quality teachers. And by the way, if you've got your index cards and you want to pass those in, Anna and Margaret can pick those up. Just let folks know. But Laura, you mentioned the budget, so I'll start with you on this, and the rest of you can reply. We have Councilmember Stewart here. So I read recently Moco 360 pointed out the County Council approved a budget of $3.3 billion, and they said that it was the largest ever allotted to the school system, but $30 million less than what the school board had requested. So to each of you, where do you think the school board's budget priorities align most with the county council, and what has to be done to make those to bring those together? Because as a consumer, somebody reading the news, of 30 million doesn't seem that big a number for $3.3 billion budget. So where is the disconnect between the school board, what the school board wants in the budget, and the county council? Who wants to take that first? I'll open it up. Rita, you want to take that? Sure.
Thank you. Like I mentioned earlier, I think it's a combination of the two. People have tried to say, well, is it that there's waste, or that we need more money, or we don't need? It's all of it, right? Costs are up. Things cost more. We have a huge school system, almost 25,000 employees, over 150,000 students. It's growing. The needs are growing. We know that COVID didn't cause some of these needs, but it did intensify them. So there is a need for more, but like I mentioned, there's also some waste. We need to make sure that we're reading our vendor contracts to ensure that they contain all the clauses and provisions that they need, like penalty clauses. We need to make sure that we're using the program evaluations that Ms. Evans mentioned and using that to cull things from our curricula or from whatever programs are not working. And then we also, again, need to build stronger relationships with our elected officials. They're not going to trust us with this budget if we don't communicate, if we don't let them know what we need, if we're not willing to answer questions, and if we don't spend wisely.
Shebra Evans, you want to respond?
Sure. So this is what so $3.3 billion, 90% of that $3.3 billion goes towards salaries and benefits. And I want us to think about this. Economics and education are tied together. I've been going to the county executive's community conversations, and he talked about, since 2010, that inflation hasn't kept up with funding, and he's not quite sure how we've been able to do what we've been able to do. What I will say is that our county council is great at being able to make a decision about how they disseminate resources to all of the county agencies, including the school board, and keep their bond rating. That's important, right? But I will say this, our school system does not look like it looked in 2010. Our students' needs are greater. If we think about how COVID exacerbated the inequities, the small businesses that are no longer in existence, think about the families who had jobs, who lost their jobs, right? So we're talking about students who are impacted by food insecurity, by affordable housing, by affordable health care, and they're coming into our schools. So there's a lot that we're doing to try to ensure that our students are ready to learn, and that requires us to do a lot. What I want us to think about is, how do we engage all of our partners? Education is everyone's business, and what we are trying to do is ensure that we're monitoring the programs very closely with program evaluations to make sure there's no waste, but the needs are greater. Our students have intense needs. And I can just say one more thing. I want to also say, some of our students, the stress levels are different. They're at an age where dysregulation is just a little bit interesting for them. They need the help and support from the counselors. So there's so many things that come into play that the school system is covering and handling that are a little bit outside of just educating our students.
Okay,
so
I'm going to cut you off there so we
share all that.
Thank you, though. Thank you. Brenda Diaz.
The question a little bit.
So the question is, in light of the budget, how did the Board of Education align with the county council? It seems that there was a disconnect in the budget process this year. So where do you think that the two can better align? The process can be more transparent.
Right. So I think that the process can be more aligned if we focus on our return on investment. Right now, just as Ms. Evans had mentioned, 90% of the budget goes towards pension, salaries, and benefits. And with what's left, we need to make sure that we get sap out all of the money that we can, all of the investment that we can out of every single dollar and dedicate that towards our children. So there needs to be a focus on making sure that we're meeting our mission of providing a high quality education and getting that return of investment. Right now, we're not doing that. Our reading and math scores are poor, and so we need to invest every single dollar into our children. That means that we need to eliminate waste. There are categories within MCPS's budget that the Montgomery County Taxpayers League in their Budget Palooza made very clear that we're in the millions of dollars and we do not know where that money is going towards. It's just labeled other, it's not transparent. So just like everyone is saying that we need to be transparent about where our money is going, absolutely, but our money needs to be dedicated to our children and providing a high quality education to everyone across the county.
Okay, and Natalie Zimmerman, do you want to take that question?
Thank you. I actually am a nerd and I have a lot of graphs. So if anyone wants to look at those graphs with me after, I'd be really happy to share them with you. But that's kind of beside my point. What I want to get at is yes, the greater transparency in our budget. And I think some of that comes with this idea of budget talk and when budget talk happens. And budget talk is actually a year-round thing that is going on. It's not just a right when we get down to the wire. And I think that's where some of that panic and confusion came in this past season of budgeting that is actually a year-round thing. I do think that the board needs to be releasing more specific data and looking at each line item. I can tell you that the 8-year-olds in front of me, they don't care about the educational consultants that we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on. That doesn't affect them day to day. If we have been spending hundreds of millions of dollars on these educational consultants for 10 years, then I'm sorry, they've been here for too long, they've consulted us enough, and if our staff hasn't learned from them, then we need to be picking one. Is it the staff or is it these consultants, right? It's hard choices, but I mean, I can tell you as a Title I teacher and as a daughter of an accountant that when it comes to that, you have to make the cuts where they're needed. So that's one of the things that we need to be looking really closely at, making sure that what goes into our budget connects back to every single one of our students and how it affects their day-to-day lived experience in MCPS.
Thanks, Natalie. And Laura Stewart.
Earlier conversations throughout the year, as Natalie said, we need to be talking right now. And again, showing all the line items and also talk about where we are looking ahead fiscally. So we are putting together a realistic budget that can be met. A lot of times what happens is that we have a budget that's passed and everyone kind of knows that's not gonna be the final budget and there's gonna be cuts. And then people feel cheated at the end. And it's not fair. It was not fair to MVA families to be part of this game of chicken. And so it made us look bad too, right? So let's be more open and transparent with each other from the very beginning about what is doable, and let's talk to families saying, hey, these are the things we're looking at, A, B, and C, and then get the feedback earlier. So we are ready to go, and we have a budget that's passed that everyone kind of like nods their head and says, yeah, this is pretty much what we expected. One more thing is I don't want to ever see dueling op-eds again from the county council and the Board of Ed. That shouldn't happen. Those conversations need to be happening face-to-face and not in an op-ed. So thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to go to questions. We have a lot from the audience. I'll try to get to as many as I can. I know we advertised till 8:30, so I don't want to keep anybody late for this evening, but a lot of good questions. And in some cases, directed at a candidate. And as I said before, a specific candidate. As I said before, somebody makes a response and you'd like to respond to the question that's not aimed at you, please just raise your hand. So first off, and a number of folks have asked this, what will you do to decrease class size and hire, and I'll put in there, and retain more qualified teachers. Rita, we'll start in the middle of this time, and Rita, if you want to go. So decreasing class size and retaining and hiring teachers.
And they're actually directly related. I was a public defender. We had ridiculous caseloads. Sometimes I would have as many as 300 case files I was bringing to court that day, 5 or 6 trials I'm prepping for the same day at the same time. So I know a little bit about some of the burdens that our teachers face there, where you're trying to meet these standards. You want to provide the best level of services that you can, but you just have too many people. And you could have given me all the pay in the world and it wouldn't have changed a thing, because I still go home feeling awful that I can't provide what I know I want to and should and they deserve. And I know that our teachers feel the same way. So when it comes to things like retention, people, oh, more money. I actually think cutting class sizes is the way that we retain more teachers, right? With increasing numbers of IEPs and 504s and other challenges, as a practical matter, how can our teachers provide for all of those students? So I think when it comes to retaining, obviously we live in a higher cost of living county. We want to make sure that we're comparable to the counties around us, that people can afford a good living, especially a lot of our teachers have kids. But making sure that we are providing pipeline programs. There's some legislation passed in the State House last year to help with that and to help transfer with reciprocation for certificates and things. Making sure that we have tuition assistance and things like that. Those programs are strong. And that we also hire more paraeducators to try to decrease some of the workload in terms of class sizes if we have to keep them high as they are now.
Okay, Shebra.
Sure. Offering our teachers a competitive wage is what I think and know is important. I've heard from our teachers. The blueprint for Maryland is requiring that we raise the pay level to $60,000, and Montgomery County started doing that prior to the blueprint for Maryland being legislated. So very proud of that. We want to make certain that our teachers want to come here and that they can afford to live here, and a very competitive wage helps. Also, with our paraeducators, it would be helpful to continue to increase their pay. They were not included in that additional pay in the blueprint for Maryland, so I strongly advocated for that as well. And you know what? Making the job look more attractive to our students that want to go into the profession. So growing our own and having the programs that will allow our students to go into teaching at a college that is nearby at a discounted rate, and being able to come back to our school system with their tuition being paid for. In addition, I lost my train of thought, but ensuring that our teachers have the time to plan, right, would be more helpful, right, for our teachers, in addition to ensuring that as we're implementing new curriculum, that we're giving them the time to get that training, adequate training, to do the job that we've asked for them to do.
Okay, and Brenda Diaz. And you talked a little bit earlier about return on investment. I don't know if you were referring to teachers specifically, but tell us more about retaining and hiring new teachers, improving classroom performance that way.
Right. So I used to be a social studies teacher at Gaithersburg High School, and I think I remember that time very fondly. And one of the things in terms of return of investment when we invest in our teachers is, for example, making sure that all of our teachers are masters of their content. So taking those grad school courses specifically, for example, as being a social studies teacher, in history, in philosophy, in sociology, whatever courses that we're offering in MCPS to our students, our teachers should be masters of that content. You should be an English, get your master's degree in English, get your master's degree in history. That should be our goal. Not necessarily education. I think in terms of professional development, MCPS can provide, classes on how to, on classroom management, for example, or you can have a second teacher in the classroom with you in terms of classroom sizes. The paraeducators, they're incredibly helpful. So I think those are some of the ways that we can help retain our teachers, making sure that they have the resources they need. I remember our copiers used to be broken all the time, and I took nonstop selfies in front of the copiers whenever they were. So these are just the kind of the practical things that we could do as a school system to make sure that we retain our teachers and that we recruit teachers.
Great. Laura Stewart?
First, we want to make sure that we're using all of our money mostly for the classroom. So I would do what Natalie just suggested and look at all of our contracts to make sure, for instance, we have a communications contract. Well, we have a communications team, so let's make sure they're doing their job and actually hire really good people in communications so we don't have to constantly get contracts. And that money can be used to hire more para-educators. We used to do more pull-outs in our classrooms, and so we can go back to doing some pull-outs. So
What exactly is for a novice like me?
Sure. So
what is a
if
pull-out?
you have outlier kids that need more help on a particular skill, then a paraeducator could come and do some pull-outs, and maybe even with some other kids in another class that you're all kind of in the same place together, or even on the other end, right? Pull out for the top end if they needed a little extra enrichment. So if we had more bodies, we have more ability to do these more individual teaching to where kids are at. And then but the elephant in the room is money. So really, we can be super lean, and we can hire more paraeducators. But to get class size down, we need to think about this as a society. How are we going to take care of our public school system? This needs to happen at the state level and the local level, and we need to have those conversations.
And on this question, let's hear from Natalie Zimmerman next.
I think we can all agree that, yes, our teachers deserve a living wage, so do all of our educational support professionals as well. Beyond that everyone is deserving a tenable workload. Sometimes there is so much piled up. I can tell you right now, I have a thick stack of papers to grade. That we're not planning to reduce our high expectations for our educators, but we can reduce the number of extraneous tasks that we ask them to do. For example, especially ones that aren't tied to educational outcomes. For example, we can let our teachers be 100% in charge of their own planning time. That costs $0. We can also reduce the paperwork that's not required. Why do I have to sign into my job every day? Why are we just now in December switching over to not a paper-based time system, but an electronic one, right? That there are all of these updates and things that we can do that will cost less time and will also cost less money or no money to our system, that will improve our educators and their work, and will also improve our educational outcomes. I also believe that we need more consulting teachers in MCPS. Their job is to support our new staff as they enter. Currently, CTs serve about 30 or more teachers. That's a really high number, especially because about 50% of our new hires are not yet certified, so they're needing a lot of extra support during that time. Beyond that, I really think our professional growth system for our educational support professionals and our administrators needs a large overhaul. They're not getting enough support, they're not getting enough training, and if they are feeling more supported and feeling like they have the right training to do their jobs, that we're going to see them stay in those positions.
So in our meet and greet earlier, I was talking to one of our guests this evening. We talked about this issue, and she wrote down this question for all of you, and if you want to raise your hand first to answer it, but it may be an area that you may know more about. She says, my main priority for attending tonight is to better understand your position or support for the Innovative School Year, ISY. This innovative approach is an amazing tool for our COLA, a Title I elementary school, with roughly 700 plus students enrolled, and she has a kindergartner enrolled there at Arcola. Do you support the Innovative School Year, ISY? Who wants to take that first?
I can start.
Shepard, go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. So I actually had an opportunity to speak with the lady who said that, and I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. We parked next to each other. I absolutely support ISY, was on the board when we started doing it, and the one thing that Principal Jean-Philippe, Principal Jean-Philippe is very great, and he has incorporated mindfulness into the program. We've seen the data is great, and the students are excelling and doing well and having access to additional instruction for an extra 30 days. So I absolutely support it, and we included it in our budget. So thank you for that question.
Natalie, do you want to take the response to this too?
Yeah, absolutely. I also support ISY. I think that the most important part of it, though, is that that's what the community around that school, that's what they want. Our COLA really organized around keeping ISY at their school because it was working for the community. They had data to prove it. And I think that's really important and essential to that argument, right? They wanted it. There was another school, Roscoe Next, that did not want it in the community anymore for other reasons. They had a sister school, and then some families had students that were on one schedule and other students that were on another, and that was really confusing and difficult for their families. So they didn't want to continue with the program. But that doesn't mean that there aren't other schools in our community that would like to have that program. It doesn't mean that it should stop at our COLA. So as long as that's what the community is supporting, then I think it should be supported by the board.
Rita, you want to go next?
So I believe the saying is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I think this is a perfect example of where we don't need change. As Ms. Zimmerman stated, the community made it very clear that this was working for them. It's working for their families, for their students. Again, at Nick's, not so much. So I think that when we have these programs that seem to be working well, we should let them be. So I absolutely support ISY.
And Brenda, would you like to go next?
I do support continuing ISI. I think it's important to listen to our families. And so there are a variety of programs that are offered across the county, and I like the fact that we have so many. For example, like our French immersion programs, our Spanish immersion programs, or just our language immersion programs at the elementary school level. We have our gifted and talented programs as well. So these are the kinds of things that we need to open up and just expand upon in terms of offering different types of things in our elementary school settings. Like, for example, maybe we want to have a Montessori type of program at the elementary school level. Maybe we want to have parents, run a sort of like co-op situation at a school, maybe a micro school within MCPS. So there's so many different models of educational programs at the elementary school level that we could introduce that I'm confident that our teachers within MCPS would be able to meet, so that's another way of honoring retention and providing a high quality education, having that opportunity and offering them also to our teachers. Maybe they don't want to stay within an MCPS system. Maybe they want to step out and do something within a Montessori or a micro school. There's just different types of things. So we have the opportunity to be creative and respond to our communities and what they'd like.
Okay, and Laura Stewart, what are your thoughts?
I absolutely support ISY. I actually think just having it at one school is probably not enough. We should look at other schools. We've had 2 schools do it. We've learned from it. Let's take that and expand, because there are some communities that could really use that extra time. It would help the community and help the family, and we should talk to our COLA and, see what's really working for them and see if we can expand that.
So I'm sure all of you saw the news earlier this week that the U.S. Department of Education on Monday announced 2 Montgomery County elementary schools, Bells Mill and Woodfield, are national blue ribbon schools, meaning they've made significant efforts to close the achievement gaps in their schools. And it fits in well with this question, because this is a how question, more specific. How will you ensure that the schools that do not have families with the resources, time, language, income, receive the same level of resources, institutional, instructional facilities, and are equitably distributed based on need? It's a long question. Laura, I'm left with you. You can go ahead and start. Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, I'm a huge supporter of community schools. We do have them now in Montgomery County. It's dictated by the blueprint. But I want to really dig in and make sure we're implementing those community schools, and they do go to schools with higher need, that we're using it to the best of its potential. And so that means really digging in and having school committees based with people from all parts of the community participating, really digging into the data from the school and seeing where we could use outside resources, nonprofits to come help. And so we're all moving together as a full community at those schools. The blueprint helps put those resources in there. And then as a county, we also need to shore up resources to make sure that, if the kind of things that PTAs fill in, for instance, after school activities and buses, make sure that MCPS is filling in those gaps where it's most needed. And I don't know if I got the whole question, but.
You covered a lot of ground. That's good.
Okay.
Thank you. So, Brenda Diaz, your thoughts on the equitable distribution of resources across the county?
All right, so the other day I had the opportunity to meet with members of the Ethiopian community in a meet and greet over at their building. And it was about 20 to 30 families that were there gathered. And their focus was community engagement. They brought in the principal of their elementary school to their building to ask them, how can we raise academic standards for all of our children in this elementary school? And they wanted, one of their major goals was, reinstituting a homework policy. So why is this, and why is my child in this grade getting homework in this class and the other child not getting homework? So when we engage with the community, ask them what it is that they need, that is the way that we can ensure equitable access to resources.
Okay. Shebra Evans, you want to address that?
You know what? So the beauty of this county is that you have so many local leaders and elected officials that want to ensure that our students are receiving a quality education. And so what comes to mind, prior to the blueprint, former Councilmember Nancy Navarro started what was called the Kennedy Project, where they used the cluster in Kennedy as a example of trying to provide wraparound services and bringing really a lot of county agencies into the fold to help support our students to see what they needed in addition to the education support. And so the community schools has allowed us through the blueprint to do more for our families. But I think also another thing that we need to get back to for our families to help, particularly for families that are not as well resourced, is providing our parents with early warning indicators so that they know in advance what they should be doing to help their students prior to receiving a report card that might have a bad mark, or to getting their district assessments, but just really communicating with our families through their schools and having the conversations early and often about where their students are and how we can help them best support their students with free materials. And that's why the curriculum that we've adopted has resources for parents that are free that they can access.
All right, and Rita Montoya.
Thank you. My family was one of those families that didn't always have the resources that we needed. My parents were teenage parents. They did their best. They couldn't help with homework after school, so we had to figure it out. What we needed was community partners. I recently had an email come through my listserv, my neighborhood listserv, about retirees who are actually in some of our MCPS schools through an organization, an outside organization. I had no idea that was even going on. I think they're in 3 or 4 MCPS schools. We should be able to do that at all of our schools. We need to make it easier for volunteers that are vetted and trained, of course, right, go through the training, to come into our schools and help. I recognize this also increases a little bit of work for our administrators and perhaps our teachers, but I think in the long run it will be beneficial, especially when we're talking about things like raising literacy rates and getting more adults in the room to help out with these big class sizes and opportunity gaps that we're seeing.
Okay, Laura, I'll get to you in a second, but let me get Brenda first. I'm sorry. Let me get Natalie first, and then we'll come back for a 30-second response from you. Okay.
Thank you. I want to reiterate that this is an opportunity gap. It's not an achievement gap. Our students can achieve and they will achieve. But this is my lived experience every day with my students. And one thing that we discuss in the classroom is a high quality first instruction. That's what we want our students to get every day when they're sitting in front of us, is that high quality first instruction. We just this year have made a shift to what's called structured literacy in our reading curriculum. I can tell you from someone who's teaching it, it is so much better than what we've been using before. But there are still definitely some bumps in the road. I was supposed to read aloud a text to the students, and I found a racial slur in the text. So there definitely needs to be a stronger vetting in that and like how we're using it. Fortunately, even though the curriculum itself didn't say like, hey, we don't use this word anymore, fortunately, I was able to say, hey, we don't use this word anymore with my students. So that's something else that as we're looking through these curriculums, they definitely need to be appropriate and they need to be inclusive. But beyond that, I really believe that a teacher on the Board of Education is someone who can bring these, speaking to the actual logistics of implementing curriculum and doing it day to day. I think that's really essential. I am able to look at a curriculum and say, hey, this actually won't be helpful because of XYZ, or hey, I have spoken to other educators and, you know, when we were talking about this curriculum, they believe that this will be more effective. I think we should go this route. Having those connections and being able to bring that to a higher decision-making level is going to be really essential in seeing our students soar and closing the opportunity gap.
And Laura, a 30-second response to.
We need to work on the tutoring gap. So that's something I wanted to talk about. You know, people with resources, they buy tutors. So we need to make sure that our families without as many resources can get tutors, but also with the early warning system that Shabra Evans was talking about. Our schools sometimes are blinking red. Like they're outliers, that the opportunity gap is wider in some of our schools, even with similar demographics. So MCPS needs an action team to go out to those schools to like shore up, go in for a couple months and say, hey, what is going on in the school so you're an outlier?
Yes, go ahead, Rita. A 30-second follow-up.
I just want us all to understand also that it's not just certain schools where these opportunity gaps exist. My children go to what is considered a very good school, and it is a very good school. But if you break our statistics down by demographic, I can tell you that when my child was in 3rd grade, we're Latino, only 18 and a little change percentage of Latino students were at proficiency rates for reading. And my child was one of them. So what does that say? Even though we're at a good school where if you put all of our numbers together, it looks really great, we're still failing a lot of our students. And so we need to also remember that it's not just our community schools, our focus schools, our Title I schools. They are in dire need, but we have need across the county at all of our schools.
I will get back to the issue of curriculum in a moment, veer off script a little on this, because I'd be derelict in duty if I didn't ask all of you about school safety. Some of you have raised it in your opening statement. Natalie, we'll start with you in terms of what are your top priorities? Where are the most, Rita mentioned blinking red. In terms of security issues for the school, what are the top priorities? And do police officers or county resource officers need to be reintroduced into county schools? Your response?
I think that first we need to actually examine our current program that we're using with the community engagement officers. We don't have enough data that's supporting that it's working or that it's not working. We need to be looking at that closer. Some open data, some transparency would be really helpful in that in our community and making choices. Beyond that, we've seen that a traditional like school resource officer model is not always what's best for kids. It does lead to a school to prison pipeline. We have data that does support that. I do believe that there has to be a solution that is somewhere in between there. I think that part of working with our communities is finding what the community is seeking and what are the specific safety issues in each building. I do want to reiterate that there are a lot of little safety changes that need to be made across our school. Right now, my classroom doesn't have a working lock. That's a problem. I also can't pull my blinds all the way closed. That's a problem. That there are these other little things that we can be fixing across our schools to make them safer. Beyond that, there are other issues with like substitutes entering different buildings and not knowing the safety procedures in those buildings, that we need to be streamlining that process. We need to be finding ways to get our substitute keys so they can unlock a door to get into it in the morning and then lock it if there's an emergency.
All right, let's hear from Laura on the issue of school safety.
This is definitely a problem. I hear about it all over the county. So what is the problem? We don't have all the data we need because not all bullying reports are even submitted because some parents don't even know that they can submit a report. We don't track from school to school incidences. So we just need to really work on and level set that we need to start reporting everything so we can actually see what's happening. And part of that, I want to suggest a climate and safety analysis at every school, and that includes all the communities, because we really need to dig into the culture of a school where anti-Semitism is accepted between peers, or other hate, LGBTQ hate, or racism. There's problems in the school. I hear about it all the time, and it's upsetting. And so we need to face this head on and say, hey, let's bring in subject matter experts and really tackle it school by school. But we need to find out where we are. And as far as the CEO program goes, I would like to keep with the CEO program. Again, find out what the data is, create stronger connections with administration, and then evaluate with community meetings.
All right, Rita Montoya.
Thank you. I come from a community where we did not have good experiences with law enforcement, plain and simple. And then I became a public defender and had clients who did not have good experiences with law enforcement. It also, though, gave me an opportunity to learn that there are all different kinds of law enforcement officers, and to understand that in certain situations, with proper training and vetting, that they really do perform a vital public service. Now, when it comes to our schools, it's challenging for me. Ideally, everyone would be getting along, there wouldn't be unkindness, there wouldn't be violence, there wouldn't be trespassers or guns brought into our schools, but that's not what's happening. So I do think that, when it comes to law enforcement, we're not going to create connection by disconnection. If we want law enforcement officers to see specifically our Black and brown students as more than the prejudices and stereotypes that they have, then they need to engage with our students in situations other than when they're responding to violence. And if we want our students to also see our law enforcement officers, at least some of them, as potential leaders or mentors, which they have in the past, then we need to create connection, but it needs to be properly trained, properly vetted, and in spaces where there's positivity going on, at the lunchtime, out on the basketball court, and things like that. We don't need them responding when someone feels like someone's being disrespectful or to hassle our kids. There needs to be a very bright red line for serious incidents, guns, drug sales, other weapons. Thank you.
Okay, and Shebra Evans, your response.
So a lot of what is happening out in the community is trickling into our schools. Currently, what we have are community engagement officers, and we want to ensure that they are adequately trained, trauma-informed, and building relationships with our students. Before switching to SROs, which I have not been in favor of, I think it's really important to have a conversation with our community. We have been committing ourselves to be transparent, to have a two-way dialogue, and to let the community know what's going to happen prior to it happening. So if there's going to be any change, there needs to be a conversation with our community. And one thing that we've been trying to do is ensure that there's a really huge commitment to building relationships. This year, a lot of our schools did things a little bit differently. Prior to the start of school or during back to school, they had community events where they had fairs, they had resource tables, they had the Montgomery County Police Department and their community engagement officers outside interacting, having fun with the students so they can build those relationships. So it's just really important that our students know who's in the building, and they know that they have someone that's stable and decent to help them in the event of an emergency.
Thank you. And Brenda Diaz.
So in this time that I've been campaigning and talking to people about my candidacy, I've often been approached by former school resource officers who have told me outright that they want the program to be reinstated, that they helped our children stay safe. They prevented a number of incidents, serious incidents, from happening in our school buildings. As a former Gaithersburg High School teacher, I know that school resource officers served as mentors to our students, that they developed positive relationships with them. And in speaking with these former SROs, current police officers within Montgomery County, they are eager to be back to help our children, to be those mentors, to be those guides, to be leaders. When we removed SROs, that was against the recommendation of the Union of the Administrators and Principals in Montgomery County, MCAP. And that's something that the board, we need to take into account. When MCAP says we need our SROs in our buildings to keep our children safe, We should have listened to them. So, I mean, having CEOs is not, it's not sufficient. And our former SROs have stated that very clear to me time and time again.
Okay, I'm going to a couple more questions. We're about to wrap up, and I'll give you a minute or two to respond at the very end for as a closing statement. I know we didn't ask you ahead of time, but if you'd like to just wrap up. But a couple more questions. So, as you all know, a group of Montgomery County parents have been fighting to overturn a MCPS policy that they claim tramples on religious beliefs. So far, their argument's been rejected at the district and appeals court levels, but they are now appealing to the U.S. Supreme Court. What is your position on the question of parental input on curriculum and the effort by some parents to opt out of certain class lessons? And Brenda, we'll work left to right and start with you.
So when this issue came up before the board, there was a recommendation made by NCAP's elementary school principals and administrators. It's known as a white paper that was released due to a FOIA filed. And in this white paper, they listed a number of reasons why this curriculum should not be introduced into our schools and why we needed to retain opt-out. In that white paper, they state that our teachers were not properly trained, that students would be asking questions of their teachers and, religious sort of questions, and that teachers were not properly trained to handle them. They also mentioned in this white paper that it would divide the community, and we have seen that play out. We've seen that play out in the form of protests. We've seen that play out now in this court case. So I would have followed MCAP's recommendation as a Board of Education member and chosen to retain opt-out.
Okay, Shebra Evans.
I want students to be able to fully participate in their education, and I think it's really important that our students in the classroom have the ability to have conversations with the help of their teacher about their experiences, their differences. I currently serve on the board. I was not in favor of opting out, and just because I believe that it's an opportunity for our students to really engage and have really enriched discussions. That's what we're here for, to help our students in life be able to commingle and interact with their peers. And this is just a way to have a conversation in our classrooms to talk about our differences. Dr. Tim Shriver has this dignity index, and I think that what we need to do better is just really have a conversation about how we can all come together to do this work together, and in the moments when we're not in agreement, to really kind of hone in on what our shared interests are, and just really making certain that as a school system, we're engaging our parents in the conversation early, and that they are aware, and that we do get feedback and take that into consideration.
Rita, your response.
Thank you. I don't support opt-out, plain and simple. Our students and their families deserve to see themselves in the curricula. I'm Native American and Mexican. Are we going to start taking out books that reflect Native American and Mexican families too, right? It leads to a very slippery slope, as we say in the law. I believe so strongly in this, and thankfully so do our state legislators, because they passed a legislative bill last session, the Freedom to Read Act, that's the name of it, so you can take a look, that enshrines that into our state policy, because those are our morals and values that we have here. So all of our families deserve to be treated with respect. I will say that even when we don't agree, however, on a policy, we must treat all of our families with respect. When they come before the Board of Education, when students are brave enough to get up and testify, which can be a very scary experience, even if we don't agree, even if those are not our values, we can treat each other with respect, and it's very important that we model that behavior for our students.
Thank you very much. Laura Stewart.
I do not believe in opt-out, and I'm a huge supporter of inclusive books and curriculum. In fact, thank you for mentioning the Freedom to Read Act, because as Vice President for Advocacy for all the statewide PTAs, I went to Annapolis and testified for that bill. I also made sure that we had a resolution in the Maryland PTA organization that says we support the freedom to read and do not support book bans. So I want to thank the Board of Ed for implementing that policy, because it's really about reading books and hearing about families that are involved in our school today. So we're learning about each other, and we can understand each other. And even if it's not, there's a cultural practice that you don't practice at home, but you see it at school, at least you're going to understand it and support each other. And so I'd like to see more inclusive curriculum and including different religious practices so we can learn about each other. That's really important. And also, so our LGBTQ families are represented.
All right, and Natalie Zimmerman on the opt-out option.
Yeah, I also do not support an opt-out, but speaking of Maryland law, we've talked about the Freedom to Read Act. I do want to reiterate that Maryland law does give families the opportunity to opt out of parts of the human health and sexuality curriculum, and I do support that. But I do believe that our students need to have access to information, and we need to make sure that students are getting accurate information, and that they're not learning it somewhere else and getting inaccurate information. But it is MCPS's job to prepare students for a future and a future in public life, and preparing them to interact with diverse people. Families and caregivers, like with any school subject, should be guiding their student in the ways that they see fit to help them develop academically and morally. It's not MCPS's job or an educator's job to parent, but instead to prepare our students for the world and to be good citizens.
Well, because I want to get our audience and our candidates out relatively on time, I'll give you a minute or so of final comments. And I know that Brenda wanted to make some comments on the opt-out, and then you can do just final closing comments. So keep it at a minute, and we'll wrap it up. Minute and a half, I'll give you for a little bit more, but yeah, make your final comments as well as your comments on the opt-out, your response.
So I believe in parents. I believe in families. I believe that we are more than capable of having and recognizing and respecting and appreciating every single member of our community within Montgomery County. I know this because I've spoken to families all across the county on this issue and on many other issues, and they want to be able to raise their child and have those conversations with them one-on-one. Teachers are role models. Teachers are mentors. Teachers lead our community. This is true, but so do our families. So do our parents. We are the foundation. And I trust us, all of us in this room, to be able to create a united Montgomery County, no matter our background, no matter our race, no matter where we come from or our economic status. As far as my other goals within MCPS, I have been committed a lifelong mission towards making sure that our children receive a high quality education. As my children have grown in Montgomery County, my career has followed their own growth. So when they were in preschool, I went out, got my certification to become a preschool teacher so that I could serve with them. When they were in elementary school, I did the same. I substituted in their schools. I served as a long-term sub at a high school level. I went to grad school, received a fellowship in order to become a master of my content as a high school social studies teacher. Okay. And then I went on and I taught. This is my final wrap-up.
Wrap it up so everybody else can get a chance. All right.
All right. So what I would like to say is that is what I aim to bring to Montgomery County. I aim to bring back academic rigor to our schools, boost teacher morale so that we can retain our best teachers, prioritize safety so that we know that our children, while they are learning, they are safe, make sure that our budget is diligently cared for, that all of our money is dedicated to our children, and that our community is engaged. I trust all of us to do this work together, and I look forward to you holding me and the rest of the board accountable when I'm serving on the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Shebra Evans.
Sure. I've been on the board for the past 8 years, and not only serving at the local level, but also giving my time and talents at the state level. I'm currently the treasurer for the Maryland Association for Boards of Education. I'm also the chair of the Educational Equity Committee. Under my leadership, we created a governance workbook for all the 24 school districts in the state of Maryland around good governance and incorporating equity into all the work that we do. I have been able to attend a variety of National School Board Association conferences. There are 40,000 school districts in this country. Montgomery County is making the mark to do the best at getting better. People are modeling their work after what's going on here in Montgomery County. I am super proud to serve on the board, to continue doing this work. I've been able, at the vote of confidence of my colleagues, to serve as the president twice, vice president twice, and I served as the president during the height of the pandemic. During that time, we did send kids home with instruction, but our priority was to ensure that our students that were food insecure had that food to be able to access their learning while they were home during COVID. I am experienced, I am steady leadership, I am here during a time when I've worked through a crisis. I know how to make corrective change and take action in this work. I've had 2 students to go through the school system, and I've used my students as a way to guide me and to inform me as I've done this work. I continue to want to do this work. I can't do it without your support and without your help. And I hope that you can go to my website, voteshebraevans.com, learn more about me, contact me via email, and vote. Vote on November the 5th. Board of Education should be at the top of the ballot.
Thank you,
not at the
Shebra.
bottom.
Thank you, Shebra. Rita Montoya.
When my child was born, I asked the doctor what I could do to make sure that they would thrive. And he told me, move to the best school district that you can. And so I did. My family and I moved to Montgomery County because I believed in Montgomery County Public Schools. And we stay here because I still believe in Montgomery County Public Schools. But like a lot of families, I get really concerned about proficiency scores, about safety. I start to feel discouraged when I see things in the news about bomb threats and guns and bathrooms being closed because of drug use. I feel really discouraged when I see that only 18.9% of our Black students and 12.1% of our Latino students are proficient in 5th grade science, because I know that that means 15 to 20 years from now, we're gonna have less Black and Latino doctors and chemists and psychologists and science-informed policymakers. And that's why I'm running for Board of Education. Because I also know that proficiency really just means just enough. And I have higher expectations for my own children and all of the children in MCPS. Because when I go places, when I see our leadership at the local, state, federal, national nonprofits, I see people from Montgomery County and Montgomery County Public Schools. But if we want to continue to lead, we have to invest in our kids now. And that means all hands on deck. It means making sure that we're adequately staffed, that we have lower class sizes, that we have proven curricula. It means making sure that we spend wisely to make sure that our budget covers what we need. And it means making sure that we have a healthy balance between social emotional health and adequate law enforcement. And if you elect me, that's what you're going to get. So vote Rita Montoya for Board of Education, member at large. Thank you.
All right. Laura Stewart.
First of all, thank you for having us here tonight. This was a really good conversation. I'm looking at the crowd and I see a few that I recognize and that I've worked with through the years to try to make our education system the best it can be. This is what I've been doing for over 10 years. I didn't get to talk about my work on the capital budget, but I really did dig in and go through those, books that are like this thick and help guide parents through them as well. It is a big system, 165,000 kids. It's a lot to do, but I have experience that I've gone through the budgets. I've talked to county council members. I've gone to the state and I've seen what can be done, but we just need to dig in more and really use the resources to the best that we can and partner with you, the community. I've talked to subject matter experts throughout the community, and sometimes for the first time ever that they've been involved in some of the committees I've worked on in the PTA level, and they've come and brought their expertise to the point where we now have air quality monitors in every classroom because I helped link MCPS to a top expert in the field that actually works at NIST. So let's do this together and make things better. Thank you.
All right, and Natalie Zimmerman, go ahead with your closing statement.
Thank you. In my classroom every day, I choose the words that I say and the actions that I take very seriously because I know that students will be affected by those words and actions for years to come. And I believe that the Board of Education needs to have that same foresight. We need a recent classroom teacher on the Board of Education to make our classrooms a better and brighter place for our educators and students. We need someone who deeply understands that our educators' working environments are our students' learning environments. I'm certified to teach kindergarten through 8th grade in English language development and special education and general education. I've seen it. I know how it works. I have multiple degrees. I'm ready to take this on. I see every year that approximately 25 to 30% of my colleagues are leaving the classroom. And this isn't just like theoretical for me. These are my colleagues. These are my actual lived experiences. I see it every day. So my greatest strength is my connection to the classroom and the relationships that I've been able to make there. We need someone on the board that is able to bring those connections with students and educators, and I know that I can be the champion for our students and for our classrooms. You can join me at zimmermanforboe.com. Thank you.
Well, on behalf of the Racial Justice Ministries, I want to thank our candidates this evening, Brenda Diaz, Shebra Evans, Rita Montoya, Laura Stewart, and Natalie Zimmerman. And for Lynn Harris, who couldn't be here, thank you for Yegas Cowan-Much for speaking this evening. And thanks to all of you for being here this evening. How about a round of applause for our... Just a couple of quick notes, too, that this is available on the church's YouTube channel, and so we encourage you to share those on your social media pages. It's also available on our Facebook page. I want to thank Marie Matthews, way in the back, who's the Director of Children's and Family Ministries, Judy Shirk, Anna Lincoln, Margaret Bowers, Diane Harris, who was greeting this evening, and I'm sure she's still here, Christine Finetta, who's been watching after the playground, Mark Simon, Kate Rios, our audio guys tonight, Darren Fenwick and Jim Ryan. Great job, guys. And Pastor Will, of course, this evening. Thank you again, candidates, and have a good night, everybody.